So you already created a supplier and everything?
Yeah, yes, yes. I'm just checking it. So we will start.
Okay.
Yeah, it is there. So setups are there. Yeah, to start with, so if we see here, so there are two tiles. So first thing is payables dashboard. So this will give us
Okay.
the high level understanding that what is happening in the business
Mm-hmm.
in terms of payable module. And the second tile we have is that invoices. So this is particularly for invoices.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever the actions that we need to do in terms of invoices, so we
Mm-hmm.
can see all those actions here, and it will show also the validation part and the different kinds of invoices that have been processed.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part we have is the payables. So payables
Mm-hmm.
here we have two parts. So one is manual, and the other
Mm-hmm.
one is PPR. So that is batch payments.
Mm-hmm.
So first I'll navigate to invoices. So here if you see, we have totally five tiles. So the first one will be scanned. So scanned is nothing but the invoices that is being scanned and sent to Oracle, and Oracle will send us as a feed, and through that we will import the invoices. So this is what we mean scanned. So here
Okay.
if you see, we have different buckets. So that is
Mm-hmm.
0 to 7 days and 8 to 14 days and 15 plus days. So we can see those details here. And if we
That is a budget, you said?
no, this is not budget. I'm saying this is kind of an bucket. 7 days bucket, 14 days bucket, 15 plus. It is kind of an categorization.
Okay.
Yeah, between 7 days, how many invoices has been scanned and processed, and maybe between 8 to 14 days, how many invoices been scanned and processed. So that is
So it's
what.
just keeping a count of how many are being done or processed.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So if I click this particular button, if I have the relevant information, system will give me the inputs.
Okay.
So if you see in this case, so someone has processed it. So which means it is before 15 days. So we have all those invoice details here. So the moment I click this button, I'll have the details and the recent ones. So recently, if I have created any transaction, so that will appear here.
Mm-hmm.
So recent means always it is in a day, like 24 hours system will calculate and give us the inputs. So I
Okay.
didn't create any transaction, so that is the reason I'm seeing no values here.
Mm-hmm.
And this will give me the invoices that has
Mm-hmm.
been put in hold.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see here, so there are 21 invoices on hold, and other 10 invoices on the purchasing thing, and others will be zero. So others is nothing but the manual holds that we can put in. So basically there are two types of holds. So one is system hold and the other one is manual hold. So system
Okay.
hold can be something like a distribution variance, line variance, or purchase
Mm-hmm.
price variance.
Okay.
So purchase price variance is basically, let's say I procure an item. So I
Mm-hmm.
quote this for a price of maybe 10 rupees.
Mm-hmm.
And while I'm booking this invoice, I mark this price as an 15 rupees. So which means 5 rupees is an difference. So this I call either purchase price variance or invoice price variance. So this will
Okay.
go in hold unless I have the tolerance set up for this particular BU.
Okay.
So those are the difference in this one hold. So apart from the system hold, we have
Mm-hmm.
also the manual hold. So when
Mm-hmm.
we will use manual hold is that there will be some special cases. So this will not be applicable in PaaS model because in PaaS we are not going to customize to a greater extent, but we will
Mm-hmm.
allow to a little extent. So in this case where we have the manual holds, let's take a scenario where we will have a customized workflow. Under this customized workflow, we will handle this hold part, where in this case, manager A. So manager A will hold this particular invoice until
Mm-hmm.
he receives the relevant inputs. Let's say he needs the PO details of this invoice. So
Okay.
this will be handled through DFF. So through
Mm-hmm.
this DFF, basically we will import this DFF from from PO to AP module.
Okay.
So unless we have this DFF in place, manager will keep this in hold. So
Okay.
this will be one of our requirement. So in this
Mm-hmm.
case, we will have manual hold. So similarly, it depends on the business scenario that how do they want to handle the hold. So
Mm-hmm.
for those cases, we can have manual holds.
Okay.
So this is about the system hold and manual hold. So when there is a hold, system will give us that 21 validations are pending, or maybe 10, or whichever count it is.
Mm-hmm.
So system
Mm-hmm.
will give us the information. So if I click here, so from here directly I can release the hold. I don't need to go to invoice and again query back and again give it. So
Okay.
if I know the invoice number and the other things, I can directly release it from here instead of going inside.
So, but what is the criteria to release it?
Yeah, so we have two kind of criteria here. So if this is manual hold, and if
Mm-hmm.
I have authority to release it, I can release directly from here.
Okay.
Or if it is a system hold. So let's take an example, the same example that the distribution and the line is different, which
Mm-hmm.
means distribution is 100 and line is 50. In this case,
Mm-hmm.
system will put on hold. So to
Mm-hmm.
release this hold, I cannot release it from here. So I will have to navigate to the invoice from here, and I
Okay.
have to change it, and then I will have
Y-
to release the hold.
So you basically have to fix it first and then only
Yeah,
release it.
yeah.
Okay.
So this is for the system holds. So for the
Mm-hmm.
manual holds, I can just release it from here.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So that is about the holds.
Mm-hmm. And these the things that are there, right? The squares are called the tiles or something. What are they called?
Yeah, basically tiles.
Okay.
Yeah, this is part of the dashboard actually. So
Okay.
usually it is being called as a dashboard, but you can say each tile,
Okay.
the aggregation of tiles, maybe we can call it as a dashboard.
Okay.
Yeah. So the next part that we have is that approval.
Mm-hmm.
So approval again, we will have the list of approval that is pending or that is rejected, or if
Mm-hmm.
something is in progress. So that will be highlighted here.
Mm-hmm.
So one invoice has been rejected, so that is displayed here.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the prepaid. So prepaid is nothing but the advances. So advances
Mm-hmm.
we have. So in past 2 months, we don't have any advances. So only thing we have is that uh, it has crossed more than 2 months. So basically, it is to monitor that whether we have prepaid expenses to book or to adjust against the particular supplier.
Okay. So tell me something. So if it's prepaid, right?
Yeah.
So you're saying 0 to 30 is like, you have 30 days. I mean,
Yes.
somebody pays in 30 days.
No, it is
Then,
not that actually. So this is about the prepaid invoice that I booked between these days.
okay. 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 In the last 30 days and the last, whatever, 30 to 60 days and then 60 plus days.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Even this, if you see, it is between days when I booked this particular transaction or when I
Okay.
scanned and imported the transaction.
Okay. So it is like within that specific number of days.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is the high level dashboard that we will be having.
Mm-hmm.
And apart from that, we have the actual transaction that we will be making. So here, if you
Mm-hmm.
see, there are three parts to it, plus one accounting periods closing or opening, provided we have access to open and close the periods for the AP module.
Okay.
So here in the first part, we will have the invoice creation. So these are the different action items that we can make while creating the invoice. So this is to create the invoice, and
Mm-hmm.
this is to create the invoice through the spreadsheet. So we can
Mm-hmm.
create invoices in Excel sheet and we can upload it.
Mm-hmm.
So there are two ways of creating the invoices. So one is using the AFBDA and the other
Mm-hmm.
one is FBDA.
Okay.
So again, the same thing, what we saw in
Mm-hmm.
GL module, the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
but we have an option. So the reason we have this is for the data migration. So when we speak
Mm-hmm.
about the data migration, so if you see in EBS or the on-premise environment, so basically we
Mm-hmm.
will have control over the environment and we can code it and we can migrate the data. But
Mm-hmm.
here in Fusion, we cannot afford to have the coding part of it since this is a SaaS model. So if
Mm-hmm.
this is PaaS model, we will have access and we can do all those things. So that is
Okay.
different. But in SaaS, we will need some sort of tools and the uploading tools.
Okay.
So that is where we have the FBTA and AFBTA. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, the difference is only the performance. So using for data migration, it is always suggested to go with FBDA to increase the performance because
Mm-hmm.
AFBDA is something like our WebAD. So this will decrease performance or it will not give more hands in terms of performance.
Okay.
So this can be used for the day-to-day business. So let's say there
Mm-hmm.
is a business where we will receive the data from the legacy system and we will plug in into Fusion application. So this
Mm-hmm.
is happening in day-to-day basis. So if
Okay.
client or the customer doesn't want to go to the past model, instead
Mm-hmm.
they wanted to have this kind of patching scenario. So for
Mm-hmm.
those cases, we can suggest AFBDA because
Okay.
if you take per day, it will not be more than maybe 5,000 invoices
Mm-hmm.
maximum. So for
Okay.
those cases, we can suggest this part. So we will be
Okay.
seeing this as well.
So
So
when it comes to this AFBDI, right, or FBDI for that matter,
yeah,
let's assume there's a legacy system, as you mentioned, and the legacy system is sending the data into our Fusion
okay,
AP, or okay, now let's take AP. So when it's sending it, so it is the technical person who has to map everything, right,
yes,
from the whatever the legacy system to this spreadsheet, whatever the columns are there,
yeah,
right?
yeah, correct. So basically,
And
we
once
have yeah,
once they map it, and then that's when the data can flow into this, and it gets then we can do the rest of the things.
yeah, yes, correct. So there are
Okay.
two parts. So one is through the coding part. So that we will
Mm-hmm.
use through the web services and the APIs. And
Mm-hmm.
the other part we will do with the manual upload. So that
Entry.
yeah, yes. So we
Okay.
will give the template to the user and maybe they can utilize it
Yeah, yeah.
anything.
I'm not talking about the manual one because I was just thinking about in terms of when you said legacy system.
Yeah,
So the only way you could grab that information is if the system sends some other legacy system sends into Fusion AP
yeah,
or whichever module that is to map these fields with that, and
yeah,
then only you can send it, right?
yes. And
Okay.
also it is suggested that if we have data more like definitely if we wanted to have the integration between the legacy and the Fusion application, it is
Mm-hmm.
suggested to take the PaaS application because it will give more control over the application or the data. So
Mm-hmm.
we can customize or we can plug in more than one or two applications as well.
Okay.
But here
What
if
happens if you're on SaaS and then you want to bring the data from the legacy?
yeah, there you can use only the web service call. So using the web service call, basically the data will be imported through only the FBDA template, which we will be configuring. So based on that, we will have the schedule processes scheduled, and through that we will import the data. So this is the
Mm-hmm.
normal process, but to have good control over the system, it is suggested to take the pass as an
Yeah.
implementation model.
Mhm. So is there a possibility that, in the legacy system, let's say there are additional columns and we don't have those in this Fusion here. What
Yeah.
happens in that case? You
Uh,
create new, I mean, you put some DFFs or something? What do you do?
No, DFF we cannot handle through DFF because the records that we will be importing will be huge. So for each
Mm-hmm.
transaction, we cannot have this DFF thing
Mm-hmm.
to be attached to it. So this is one thing, and the other part is that maybe one field it can be accommodated. Apart from that, if you have more data or the more
Mm-hmm.
fields coming in, than
Mm-hmm.
the fields that what we have as a standard thing in Oracle. So for those cases, we need to add a few columns and the other things in the tables, but we will not have access to the tables. So that is why I
So
was
you have to call Oracle. I mean, you have to open an SR. Is that
no,
how you do it? I'm just asking. I don't know.
no,
I'm.
no, like if you have additional columns to be added in the table, so
Mm-hmm.
it is not suggested because SaaS model by itself will say that we cannot have more of an customized environment, but instead it will be the application that will be given by Oracle. We will be using as it is, apart from few changes here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But if we wanted to have more customized environment, we need to take the pass model.
Okay, but they will not change anything, even if there are additional fields. Let's assume there are additional fields from legacy,
Okay.
and there's you can't accommodate that here in Fusion
Yes.
as SaaS in SaaS. Let's assume. So if that's the case, so Oracle is strictly saying if you want those kind of additional changes to be accommodated, you have to go for a pass model.
Yes. Correct.
But we will not do anything in SaaS for you.
Yeah. So if the data can be imported using the existing table structure, so that can be
Okay.
made.
Yeah, yeah, that I understand. But what I was thinking is sometimes I'm just throwing out there. Let's assume there are additional fields or columns that are not there here. So
Yeah.
how do you do it in that case was my question. I mean, and if you're in a SaaS model, forget about PaaS. So what would be that scenario? How would it work?
Yeah. In that case, we cannot add additional columns in the table.
Mm.
Because if you see, that is the difference between on-premise and the SaaS model.
So
So
which
not,
means that we, as a functional consultant, you should be able to tell that to the client that that is not a possibility.
yeah, yes, correct.
Okay. And so if they say how do we solve this issue? We don't want to pay for pass. What would you as a consultant do?
No, if we don't want to pay and if we wanted to continue only this way,
Hmm.
but still we wanted to have this imported into our system. So the only way is to add it as an attribute or utilize the DFF. So
Okay.
I mean that might create the performance issues, but still that is the only option that I can suggest.
Okay. Okay. Now I'm just thinking in terms of,
Yeah,
how would you suggest, or people may come up with these kind of questions, right? Don't want
yeah,
to spend money, but
yes.
they want everything. So what do you do?
Yeah, so that is the option that we have. So apart
Okay.
from this, it depends on the data that what we are getting in. So
Hmm.
based on that, we can suggest.
Okay.
So maybe there are a few things that we can accommodate with DFF, and there are few things that we cannot add as a DFF as well. Like let's
Hmm.
say we have additional columns that is required in maybe asset module. So
Hmm.
there it will be difficult to handle because we don't have much TFF there.
Hmm.
So that depends on the data that we are getting in. So based on that, we can suggest. But as
Okay.
far as now, I could see only one option that is using the DFF.
Okay. So will you be showing how to create a DFF or
Yes, yes,
something like
yes.
that?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Okay.
yeah. So we have the standard invoice creation or the manual way of creating invoice. And
Mm-hmm.
then we have invoice through the spreadsheet, AFBTA, and then we have recurring invoices. So if you see
Mm-hmm.
EBS, we can create recurring invoices, but here if you see, I mean, manual way of creating the recurring invoices. Here, if you
Mm-hmm.
see, you can create recurring invoices only through spreadsheet. We cannot create it in manual.
Yeah. So the one that says create recurring invoices is a spreadsheet.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you tell me why we create recurring invoices?
Yeah, to avoid the repeated entries. Like let's say I have maybe 100 offices or maybe more than 100 offices. So all are
Okay.
rented. So
Mm-hmm.
in this case, I want to create 100 invoice per month on opening of the period on a on a periodical basis. So to avoid this, if there is an way that I can automate it, so I will utilize it. So here in this case, I know that I will have a rent of 10,000 per month.
Oh
So
yeah, got it. So it's kind of repeated things that you know of.
yes, repeated bills, as the recurring bills, we can say.
Recurring bills. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those, we can use the recurring invoices.
Okay.
So when we create this as a template, basically this will create multiple invoices for the period. So let's say I
Mm-hmm.
create this on the month of January. So I say
Mm-hmm.
for the 12 months. So I know that this
Mm-hmm.
will happen for the next 12 months also. I'm not going to change the landlord. So
Mm-hmm.
in this case, what I will do is that I'll create for the 12 months. So system will generate the invoices for all 12 months. And for the respective month, I can just run the concurrent program called validate invoices, and I can validate for all the offices. So
Mm-hmm.
this is how we can handle it.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we have invoices where we will be able to see the invoices from here. So we have two things. One is from dashboard and the other thing from the invoices. So basically
Mm-hmm.
dashboard will show only the recent items. So if you see 61 plus 1 day, 61 plus days, so
Mm-hmm.
we will have it as a group in this particular type.
Mm-hmm.
But if I wanted to take maybe 4 months or 5 months old invoices, maybe I'll go to manage invoice
Mm-hmm.
and I will have the invoice number and by which I can find the invoices.
Okay.
So this is basically a query page.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then we have apply missing conversion rates. So maybe there will be cases where the currency rate is not defined. And if
Mm-hmm.
we wanted to apply it manually, we can apply it from here.
Okay.
And validate invoices. Maybe if
So
it,
this conversion rates, the apply missing conversion rates, these conversion rates are the ones that we give in GL, right?
yes, correct.
Okay. And in case there we missed something, here you can correct
Yeah,
within the subledger.
yeah, for a particular date.
Okay.
Provided this is an user based currency conversion.
What does
For
that mean?
corporate, yeah, for corporate, we cannot give directly in the application since
Mm-hmm.
we have already defined a method called corporate and we will give the rates there in the corporate rate type.
Yes.
But the other ways are there where user can enter it manually. So for
Mm-hmm.
those cases, we can apply it from here. We don't need to create it there.
So let's assume so in GL now, at least the previous ones that we did, we applied corporate,
Yes, yes,
right?
yeah.
So if that is the case, and but corporate is something that automatically adds up every single day.
No, no, we will load it through the
I
web
mean,
page.
that's what I meant is
Yeah, yeah.
when we load it, it's for every day or whatever selected period of time.
Yes,
So, and in that case, we can't use this here.
yeah. We,
Okay. This is only when you use other than corporate, and if you use a user-defined conversion rate, that's when you can change it here
yeah,
or add it here,
yeah,
basically.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then validating the invoices, and we have the approval, so we can initiate the approval
Mm-hmm.
and importing the invoices.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe while importing, we have error or something, so we can correct it.
So
And
these importing invoices, everything is an interface when we come to that.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, and import payment request. So maybe this can be also imported. The payment request types will be there. So
Mhm.
for example, we have refunds. We have sold some items, so we have refunds. So this will be one of payment request. So similarly, if we
Mhm.
have something, we can import it.
Okay.
And we have accounting part of it. We can do the create accounting,
Mhm.
and we have the adjustment journals, and we have reviewing the journals and payables to GL reconciliation. So this will basically sort out the difference between our payable module and the GL
GL.
module. Yeah, correct.
So tell me why you would have create adjustment journal here. What has got journals to do with AP?
Logically speaking, it shouldn't be there. So
Uh-huh.
since this is an standard role, we are seeing these options. But usually
Okay.
we will have only create accounting and
Uh-huh.
payables to ledger.
Yeah, because only those two make sense to me.
Yeah,
The other two don't make sense to me.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Since
okay.
it's a standard role, I didn't change anything. So that's it.
Oh, it's the standard role.
Yeah.
Ah, so you have to go. So what do you do in this case? So standard role in the sense, what's the role that you've assigned to train T now for AP?
Yeah, so I have assigned three roles to this particular user. So one is accounts payable specialist, accounts
Uh-huh.
payable supervisor, and accounts payable manager.
Okay. So let's assume if we don't want to see those two in the accounting, what should you do? You just go and edit it there
Yeah,
at the role level?
yeah, yes, we need to customize the roles. So we need to
Uh,
remove certain functions that has been allowed in this case.
so okay. So the general roles when you assign, it's automatically giving these to the user. But if
Yes.
you are specific, I mean, if you don't want to see these, then you have to go edit and remove whatever you don't want to see. Okay.
Yeah. For example, payable manager will be opening the periods and closing the periods. So
Mm-hmm.
if I have removed this option, I'll not be able to see this manage accounting periods. So
Yeah.
similarly, we have something inside the role, so we can
Mm-hmm.
customize. Maybe we can remove this option. Let's say initiate approval or flow. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
want this particular user to initiate the approval. So the
Okay.
second level, it will be initiated. So I will give to
Mm-hmm.
the another user.
Okay.
So that way we can basically customize the roles. So based on that, we will have the functions that I can perform.
Okay. So, a basic, very, very basic question when we come to AP, right? So, if when we say AP, right, what in the P2P cycle,
Yeah.
we when somebody asks, right, if you've done AP or you worked on AP, so you just start off with the invoice piece, or do you have to talk about the purchasing part also?
No, you're saying for the functional consultant or the finance consultant.
Mm, I don't know. I'm just
Like
saying,
basically,
if
yeah,
you're you're going for a financial functional role, right?
yeah,
So, and if you say, oh, I don't know about purchasing module or whatever, but I know only AP, I worked on AP. So, do you start off just from the invoicing piece?
yeah. So if this is handled by the functional consultant, so functional consultant is the one who can handle both the SEM part and the finance part. So in this case, if this particular person is doing the, let's say he's doing an UAT. So we have
Mm-hmm.
configured the system. So he is doing the UAT to the customer. So in this
Mm-hmm.
case, he will start from the purchasing, which is from the requisition, purchase order,
Mm-hmm.
receipt, and invoicing and payment, accounting, and reconciliation. So everything he will show.
Okay.
But in case we have specifically SEM consultant and finance consultant. So in this case, finance consultant will start from invoice and SEM consultant will start from requisition and end with receipt, receipt or receiving. So
When
from there,
is it SCM, right?
SEM.
SCM, supply chain
supply chain
management.
management.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So if it is an AP guy, he doesn't have to typically, I mean, of course, overall they'll know that how it works in terms of purchasing or acquisition or that. But in general, functionality wise, they don't need to know what's going on in SCM.
yes,
Okay.
because we have
But
a lot. Yeah.
yeah, but would it be possible for you to show me from just the requisition part how it works? Or is that some other setting that needs to be done?
Yeah, that needs
It's a bigger
configuration.
set. That's a bigger configuration. Okay.
Yeah,
I thought it's something simple, so you can just put something there and push it here and show me.
because we have the catalogs and we have approvals. Uh,
Ah,
there is finance part of it. The tab, maybe I can show the configuration of tab, but complete purchasing I cannot show because
no, no, no. You don't have to show the complete purchasing. What I'm meant is like simple. Let's say somebody creates a requisition purchase order, and that flow.
yeah, that's what that we need SEM consultant.
Ah, that needs a lot of. Okay,
Yeah,
it's not simple then.
yeah, that need some configuration effort for that setting.
Okay, okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, so after accounting, we have the create mass addition. So that is for the asset invoices. Maybe if I'm purchasing a desktop, so I'll
Mm-hmm.
create invoice and I'll import this into FA module and I will convert this particular invoice as an asset. So maybe if in future, maybe after maybe 2 months, if I look at
Mm-hmm.
this particular asset, if I wanted to check the invoice for the audit purpose, so
Mm-hmm.
I'll be able to pull it. So that is where we will need the create mass addition process. So that is from the AP module to our fixed asset
Fixed
module
assets. Okay.
and manage accounting period. So this is basically to open or close period. So that's it.
Mm-hmm. So, do the assets thing, I mean, does this, is that part of AP as well in the sense like, or is it something additional because you have the role?
No, it will be part of AP mostly
Oh,
because
okay.
if you see the invoices will be created from AP consultant. So AP
Okay.
consultant are the AP the one who creates this invoice creator. So he should be able to create the invoice and push this data to the fixed asset module.
Okay.
So basically the invoice will be created. So we have
Mm-hmm.
few parameters as well to create the invoice. And once that is done, so basically we will create the this one. This will trigger and schedule process. So this will
Okay.
push the data from payables to fixed asset module. So this will be there for the AP concern, AP ethics.
AP person. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So these are the options that we have to perform
Mm-hmm.
in the invoices.
Mm-hmm.
And apart from that, maybe I have the invoice number and I'll just go and search with the invoice number. I can just enter this and I can click search. So this will take
Okay.
me to the particular invoice page.
Mm-hmm.
And apart from that, we have the analytics part of it. So maybe this will be handled through the technical person. So once
Mm-hmm.
that is created, so we can
Mm-hmm.
have this here. So if you see, so we can see the chart and the other things here.
Mm-hmm. Is this something that you created or somebody created?
No, somebody created. So it will be created by technical resource basically. So it is kind of an chart and the other graphical representations.
Mm-hmm.
So it will just give us the high level understanding on the invoices uh, created and the other thing based on the values that we are giving in here.
Okay.
Yeah, I think parameters are not set up, so maybe I'll check if something is there. Maybe we'll see this in next class.
Hmm.
Yeah, so this is nothing but the graphical representation way of looking at the data.
Okay.
So the same data, it can be seen in multiple forms. So that is
Hmm.
what about the graphs and the other things. Yeah.
Hmm.
So this is to match the purchase order. So if we have purchase order, so we
Hmm.
can just give the purchase order number, and based on this number, system will pick in the business unit, supplier, and the site, and all those details, and we can create the invoice by
Okay.
giving the invoice number and the invoice date.
Okay.
So we will try to create one
So
simple.
just a quick question. So when we look at this one, right? So it's starting off with creating an invoice, but we don't have any place where to create a supplier.
Yeah, supplier will be created. Okay. Okay. Let me take this.
Because for me, the start with the basics. I've never worked on AP, so I want the basics.
Yeah. Yeah.
The more the basic, it is better.
Yeah. So, if you see in EBS, so supplier will be created in mostly payables. But
Yeah.
here in Fusion, if you see, it will be created under procurement.
Uh-huh.
So under procurement, we will have the supplier creation and all those things.
Okay.
But AP executive or the AP user will not have access to create the supplier. And
Supplier.
here,
Okay.
yeah, and here we have two parts. So one is to create the supplier, and the other one is to create the supplier site. So
What
even
was
the
that?
supplier and supplier site.
Site. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, site is nothing but the another office of the supplier.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone who has access or anyone who has the required role
Mm-hmm.
for the procurement executive,
Mm-hmm.
so we can create the supplier. But to create site, I need to be an procurement agent. So procurement agent is nothing but buyer. So who is buyer? Buyer is basically the one who raises the purchase order or who raises the requisition to the supplier.
Mm-hmm.
So logically speaking, so he is the one he will know that who is the supplier needs to be entered into the system. So actual
Yes.
process starts from the procurement agent or the buyer. So who is the
Okay.
one who needs to create the supply? So that is why in Fusion there
Mm-hmm.
is a little change from EBS. So
Okay.
this particular procurement agent, he will be assigned to a particular business unit. So let's say
Mm-hmm.
we have business unit A and B. So if I have
Mm-hmm.
access to only A, so which means I can create supplier only for the business unit A, but I cannot attach business unit B here. The person who has access to the business unit B only can create the site of the what do you call the business unit B. But whereas I will be
Mm-hmm.
able to still create the supplier, but I will not be
Mm-hmm.
able to create the supplier site or assign the site to the vendor.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the difference. So that is why there were a few changes from EBS to Fusion. So where the control has been shifted to procurement agent. So in this
Okay.
case, procurement agent can create the supplier.
Okay.
And here, if you see, we have two things. So one is to create the supplier, and the other one is to manage supplier or to create or see the created supplier.
Okay.
Or other one is to import the supplier.
Mm-hmm.
So
So
these
is
are,
that supplier, import suppliers is also a spreadsheet?
yeah, yes, correct, spreadsheet.
Okay. And what is merge suppliers?
Yeah, so merge supplier is something that maybe I have two suppliers. So this supplier has merged their business. So in this case, what I'll do is that I'll make it as an one supplier.
Oh. So is that something that you can do? Like you can merge two
Yes,
suppliers?
yes, we can do.
Oh,
Yeah. So we will see that. As a first step, we will see creation of supply. So what are the options that we
okay. Thank you. Like it makes it a little more easier for me to understand.
Yeah, so here, if you see, okay, let me create a new supplier called maybe Tata, the same name. I'll try to create a new supplier. And here, if you see, we have two things. So one is prospective supplier, and the other one is spend authorized supplier. So
Mm-hmm.
prospective supplier is nothing but that we have quoted with something, but we are
Mm-hmm.
not sure whether we will be making the or
Finalizing with that.
yeah. So it
Okay.
is kind of a prospective supplier where we will not do the actual business, but instead this will
Mm-hmm.
stay in our database. So once this is
Mm-hmm.
confirmed, we will make this prospective supplier as a spend authorized supplier.
Okay.
So the prospective supplier will not be able to get in the invoice page as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the vendors that is assigned as an spend authorized is the one we will see it in the invoice page.
Okay.
So I just say this is an spend authorized, and I'll say this is just an categorization,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll say create. So this will take me to the page where I can create the actual supplier details or give the information of the supplier.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have given the tax organization type, and here
Mm-hmm.
we have tax type. I mean supplier type.
Supply type.
Yeah. So I'll just say supplier for now,
Mm-hmm.
and apart from that, if you wanted to have this as an, maybe there are few companies that will work under what do you call, the parent and child relationship, or
Mm-hmm.
subordinate companies. So on those
Mm-hmm.
cases, we can attach the parent supplier here. So for the
Okay.
identification purpose. Yeah. So this is one thing, and so this is
What
the
do you do for the attachments there? What do they expect there
so
on the
attachment.
header?
So this is like complaints part. So for example, if you take India cases, so where we
Mm-hmm.
will have MSME details and the other things attached. So for the
Okay.
MSME, so basically we will need to add the additional details of the MSME, and apart from that, we will have the MSME certificate as well. So if we have
Okay.
MSME certificate of the particular vendor, what we will do is that we will just click here and we will add the MSME details of it. So for that,
Okay.
we can just take this file from our local system, which we
And
received
attach it
from
here.
the,
Okay.
yeah, which we received from the. So similarly, we can take. So this is complaints are country-based requirement to give the attachments. So this is
Okay.
always an option.
So how would you know that in the sense like country based or a compliance related, right? Sometimes how do you know which is compliance based
Yeah.
as a
So
consultant?
yeah, while taking the requirement,
Uh-huh.
so client or the customer will give specifically that I wanted to see this particular field for when I'm creating the vendor or the supplier. So
Oh, the
give me,
client will tell you that.
yeah, client
Okay.
will tell. Yeah, it will be received as a part of requirement.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
yeah, so we will document it, and based on that, we will map it here as well to have it. So for few cases, we might have this as a mandatory. So for those cases, we will need to change it to mandatory.
It's
Now,
required. Okay.
yeah, now if you see, this is only the optional field. So only
Mm-hmm.
thing that is mandatory here is only the supplier.
Mm-hmm.
So unless I give the supplier name, I'll not be able to save this particular supplier.
Yeah. But in case you want to make this mandatory, how do you do that?
Yeah, that is technical part of it. So technical,
Okay, so the technical person can make it mandatory if
yeah,
needed.
yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah. So this will be our header information.
Mm-hmm.
And if we see line information, we will have organization, products,
Mm-hmm.
taxation, and payments. So you can give the name that we wanted to have, and we
Mm-hmm.
have other information of the supplier as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if we wanted to mark this as an one-time supplier, we can mark. So which means we will use this particular vendor for one time.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to customer number, right,
Yeah,
on the right side, what is the customer number here? We're talking about the supplier here.
yeah,
So what is the customer number?
yeah. This is only the identification number. Like this is again the country specific. For India cases, if you see the customer number, SIC, and the national insurance number, these things will not come into role. So this will be only kind of an additional information. I'm not sure which country will use the customer number on SIC.
Okay. So
Uh,
it is not anyway, this is not required, so we don't have to bother about it.
yeah, this is only the additional information where for certain countries, if you wanted to use, we can utilize this fields.
Okay.
Yeah,
So what's mandatory here? Nothing in this one, an organization?
yeah, this is only the additional information. Nothing is
Oh,
mandatory. So all are uh, like basically, if you receive the copy of purchase order, we will not have all this information. We will have to get it through mail. So when
mm-hmm.
we are getting through mail, we will not have all this information when the supplier business has established
Mm-hmm.
and their incorporation and all those things. So when if we have the details, we can attach it. So that is the point. But if you see the entire part, this is optional. So we
Okay.
don't need to enter anything also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is the DFF which I was saying. So maybe after this we will see that where we can set up this DFF. But
Okay.
if you set up the DFF, so this is
Mm-hmm.
where we will get the information.
Mm-hmm.
So the DFF name is debt rating. So under the debt rating, I have loaded these values. So I'm
Okay.
seeing these values.
The list of values. So how do you know that debt rating is a DFF?
Yeah, we will not have anything here. So basically,
Nothing to identify
yeah,
it as a DFF.
yeah, specifically it will not say this is an DFF. That based on our configuration, we need to identify, yes, I have given debt rating, so this is a DFF. So that is how we can
Okay.
identify. But for
Okay.
an
Only the
users, yes,
person who's configuring only knows that that's a DFF, but otherwise, like a regular user will not know what a DFF is on this page,
yeah,
just looking at it.
yeah, user will think that this is an usual this
Yeah,
thing
because
that
that's
is,
what even I thought.
yeah, yeah, only the person who was configured will know it is an DFF.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So that's it on this part. So basically, it will have additional information about the organization,
Mm-hmm.
and then we will have the business classification. So business
Okay.
classification is nothing but to classify whether this is a particular category. Let's say this is an fire equipment manufacturer. So for those we might have special sub classification as well. So for those cases we can use this. Again, this is not a mandatory setup. This is an optional.
Okay.
And also the products and the services. Maybe they might have different products under this particular
So
vendor.
this is all related to the supplier. If the supplier has, let's say, n number of products and n number of services they're providing, all that will be listed here.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And then we have taxation part of it. So let's say we have fusion tax implemented. So for those
Mm-hmm.
cases, if we wanted to have vendor specific taxation.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say for vendor A, I wanted to have 5% and vendor B, I have 10%. So
Mm-hmm.
what I will do is that I'll attach the tax classification code so that so based on the system will default and it will tell us that this particular vendor is 5% or 10%. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of having it at the invoice level, we can attach it here itself, and
Mm-hmm.
we can automate the taxation part.
Okay. So tell me one more thing. I mean, I mean, I'm not very good at any of these, but I'm just going to ask you these questions. So when it comes to taxes, right? How to, like, say I'm setting up something right now in AP, and I have to set up something for the supplier in terms of taxes. How do I know what percentage of taxes should be set up?
Yeah, that should be given by customer. We will get the inputs from customer
The
base.
supplier will give us that.
No, supplier will not give customer, like in the sense to whom we are implementing. Customer will
Oh,
give
the
us the,
client will give you that. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So they will give us the input. But apart from that, we have a few rates. So that will be defined per country, based on the countries, so that a consultant should be aware of. For
No, what
example,
I'm trying to get at is, right, like, see, I'm still, my brain is always confused with the suppliers and customers. Okay, so now supplier is somebody that from where you are getting your product.
yes, correct.
Okay, so let's say I am whatever, I am Tata company employee.
Okay,
Okay, and I'm entering in the system the supplier information.
okay.
When it comes to this taxations and all that, so I, as an employee, may not know exactly what the tax may be, but somebody from higher up sends me the tax information
No, even
for this
the
supplier.
user, no, even the user will know, because user will get in the bill or the copy of invoice.
Oh, how much tax is there? It's
Yeah,
there in the bill.
yeah, yes.
Ah, no, but that bill thing comes only afterwards, right? You're just setting up the supplier right now.
Yeah, so there are two cases. If this is a new vendor, we will
Uh-huh.
not attach directly the tax code. So
That is
for
my
the,
question.
yeah,
See,
yeah,
Ulta, see that I'm coming everywhere, and finally I came to the point.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
That
for
was
this,
my question. I mean, like, how the heck will you know when he's a new person? I mean, you're just
yeah,
setting him up in the system for the first time.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So for those vendor we cannot set up. So this will be for the vendor that is already available or exist in the legacy environment itself. So we will have maybe 5 years or 10 years of good business with them. So we will know that what has been done and what is not done. So everything we know. So based on that we can give it. So the reason we are giving it here, so this is not a mandatory setup. So the reason why we are giving it here is that if we see the tax application, how it will work is that it will work based on the business unit, but not the vendor. So if we wanted to automate for a particular vendor, so we will
Mm-hmm.
have to give it here. So if we are not giving it here, so
Mm-hmm.
based on the tax application that we have set up in the Fusion Tax, basically system will tell us that for this particular business unit, this is the taxation. But for
Okay.
this vendor, the tax rate is different. So what we will have to do is that we will have to change the 5% to 10% manually. So instead, if we have attached here in the vendor, system will
Mm-hmm.
basically pick up from the vendor side or the vendor as a whole, and it will give the rate, the taxation rate.
Okay.
So
So
that,
what I get to understand is anything that's given at the supplier, the tax, let's assume we're giving the tax at the supplier level,
yeah,
this overrides whatever tax has been set up in the system.
yes. If it is
Okay.
not there in the vendor, system will pick from the tax configuration.
Okay.
Yeah,
But if it is there in the tax configuration, and if let's assume if it's there in the tax configuration as well as at the supplier level, but the supplier one is, overrides the tax.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. So that is about the taxation part,
Hmm.
and these are like rounding off and the other things.
Okay.
And apart from that, we have the tax registration, tax classification, and the codes. So this we will basically define it in the fusion taxes, and
Hmm.
whatever it is there, we can attach it here.
Okay.
So all are like taxation code and the withholding part and the other things.
So none of these, but in this one, classifications, I think we have some mandatory ones, right?
Like
Like the
if we
physical
are,
classification
no, this
type
is
code.
not mandatory. If I'm adding it, physical
If you're
classification,
adding it, you'll have to add those fields.
yeah,
But otherwise, none of them are mandatory here.
yeah, not mandatory.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are the part, and apart from the transaction taxes, we will have the income taxes if we are using it maybe for the individual or maybe the companies, so that
Hmm.
we can define like the TDS and the other part we can define it. So this will be country based things.
Okay.
And we have the payments. So payments is like we have two parts to it. So one is that the actual payment that we will be enabling, which needs to be defaulted. So either it is check or electronic or NEFT or wire or any mode of payment. So that we will
Okay.
define it here. So
Hmm.
we can just check this. So for now, I'll just do this one, and I'll just click this one to default. So when I see this green
Oh,
check this,
default. Okay.
so this is defaulted.
Hmm.
And apart from that, we have the bank account details of the vendor.
Okay.
So it is not mandatory that all the cases I will need the bank accounts. So when I will need this bank account is that when I have online transaction or which has direct linkage between the bank and the customer or the client. So for those cases, I will need bank accounts. So
Hmm.
because what will happen is that so system will create a payment file. So this payment file will have the information of the vendor's bank details or bank and the other branch details. So
Yeah.
unless I give it here, the payment file will not generate the supplier's account details.
Hmm.
So that is the reason we need this information. So
Okay.
if we are processing the check and the cash part of it, so we will not need this bank account. So,
Okay.
but if we are processing through electronic or directly to the bank, so for those
Hmm.
cases we will need this bank account attached to it.
Okay.
Yeah. So these are the options that we have.
And payment attributes, what does that mean?
Yeah, payment attribute is like channels. Like how do we want to transmit our the files to the bank? So
Oh,
there are two ways of sending the files to bank. So that would be manual, or we wanted to have communication with the bank. So that we
okay.
call H2H. So H2H is nothing but host-to-host communication, where our portal or our port or our server will be linked with the bank server.
Okay.
So for this we need bank whitelisting. So bank whitelisting is nothing but bank will add our port or our server details in their IPs, so that
Okay.
we can communicate with their server and we can send the payment files. So from there,
Hmm.
bank will pick the files and bank will process it. So if we are
Okay.
not using this option, what we will have to do is that basically we
Hmm.
will have the corporate account of net banking. So from
Hmm.
there we will log in and we will upload the payment file.
Okay.
So, so from there, bank will pick the payment file and process it,
Hmm.
and we will
Okay.
get the UTR number in the bank statement. So this is the normal process.
So I'm a little, I mean, a question here.
Yeah,
So where is the supplier site here?
yeah. Supplier site will be here. Like we will have the address, site, and the other details. So
Oh, this is all under only profile. So many
yeah,
things came. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Oh God. Okay.
Yeah. So that is why I was saying. So if you see organization and the other things, so this is
Uh-huh.
just an additional information. So this is not.
Oh, okay, okay. I was wondering what happened. I thought there were many more things to supplier.
Yeah. So supplier will be a little vague. Like we can store more information.
Yeah, okay. But these are all additional ones which we are not worried about. The main things are the in profile is the first header part.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, header part, and maybe if you want to give the payment method, so
Payment
that we
methods. Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So these are the two options basically.
Okay. But where, so in the payment methods is where does it sometimes I think at supplier level also we have the payment terms, right? Where do we attach that?
Supplier level payment terms.
Do we have anything at the supplier site level? There'll be payment terms, right? Probably at
The
the site
payment
level.
terms will be there. I mean, payment terms in the sense you are saying 7 days
Like
return.
net 30 or
Yeah, yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Correct. That will be there.
That is
Yeah,
at the site level.
yeah, yes, correct.
Okay, okay. I'm trying to relate to whatever I was working with,
Yeah,
and just okay.
yeah. Yeah, so that's what we have two ways of handling the payment. So one is to manually upload in the net banking, or if you wanted to add it. So basically, if you are using the H2H host-to-host communication, so
Mm-hmm.
bank has to whitelist our IP. So whitelisting IP is nothing but bank will add our IP with their server. So for
Okay.
that, our IP should be a public IP instead of private IP. So that will be comes under the technical or the infrastructure part of
Security
it.
team.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So based on
Okay.
that, once the bank whitelisting is done, so we
Mm-hmm.
can do the transaction and we can generate the payment file. So for this, we will have a schedule process. So what the schedule process will do is that this schedule process will basically transmit the file from our server to the bank server. So from
Okay.
there, bank will also have a schedule process where it will pick every 5 minutes
Mm-hmm.
or maybe 15 minutes. So based on that,
Okay.
system will pick the file and it will process the particular request if you
Okay.
have balance on the particular account. So
Okay.
it will process. So this is what. So that is when we will need the bank account. So maybe
Okay.
if I'm using only the check as a payment method, so for this
Mm-hmm.
case, I don't need the bank account and the other details because already I have the bank account and details attached to the check.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, so this is about the supplier. So apart from the supplier, we need to create the supplier site, which means I have two different branches for this particular supplier. So I need
Mm-hmm.
to create each sites or the branches.
Mm-hmm.
So for that, first thing is to create the address.
Okay.
So I'll just create one address. Yeah, so here I have two things. So this will become mandatory for me. So I should use at least one of this option. So unless I select
Okay.
this, so I will not be able to complete the address part. So in this
Okay.
case, I have used this for ordering and Remeto since I'm not using the purchasing module. So I
Mm-hmm.
have left RFQ and bidding.
So when you say remit to, what does that mean? You're sending the money.
Yeah, so remit to is nothing but where this payment should be remitted to. So once I complete this process, maybe I'll have the informations of the vendor.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, I can say that. So remit to should be defined there.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have just given the basic address details, and I have added the purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And apart from that, I have the procurement BUs. So if you see, there are a lot of BUs that is defined, but I'm seeing only two options. So one is
Mm-hmm.
Tata Steel new, and other one is Tata Consulting
Mm-hmm.
new. So which
Okay.
means I have been assigned as an procurement agent only for this two business unit.
Two business units.
Yeah.
Okay.
So apart from other two business unit, I cannot assign anything. So let's say I am an procurement agent, but still I'm not authorized to create any sites. So for those
Mm-hmm.
cases, I can create only the vendor. So after
Okay.
creating the vendor, I'll send the vendor number and the vendor details to the specific department. So this particular department will create the site or the addresses and the other specific details.
Okay.
So for those cases, I will restrict the access for this particular business unit for this user.
Mm-hmm.
So in this
Okay.
case, I have access to two things. So I'll select Tata Steel.
Okay.
So I'll just say site one. So here
Also,
I'll
basically,
say,
whatever you created up is what you're trying to add here as site.
yeah, yes, correct. So I might differ on the transaction taxes that I have created also. So it
Mm-hmm.
will be always on the site level. So if this is not in the site level, system will check on the supplier. So if it
Okay.
is not there in the supplier, system will pick from the actual tax configuration.
Tax configuration. Okay.
Yeah. So other things are similar, like we have the payments and the other things. So I have
Mm-hmm.
just added one procurement BU access. So
Mm-hmm.
that is Tata Steel new BU.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just save this. So unless I add the address, I'll not be able to create the address. So I created the address and now I'll try to add the site access. Yeah, so based on the previous setup, we have all those details already
Mm-hmm.
populated.
Yeah.
So apart from that, we have the purchasing and the invoicing payment part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, maybe after site assignment, I'll explain about this parts. So here we have two things. So one is to auto create assignment, or we can add it manually. So auto create is nothing but it will just create BU assignment, and we will have to give the ship to and bill to details if it is
Okay.
required.
Mm-hmm.
And apart from that, we have the account code generation. So maybe if
Mm-hmm.
we are on a special case, so if we
Mm-hmm.
have the liability account and the prepayment account generated based on the supplier side, so we can give
Okay.
it here. So if the so again, this is not mandatory. So we can utilize it
Mm-hmm.
from the common configuration that we have done in the earlier session also.
Okay.
Because always system will check on the site. So
Mm-hmm.
if this is not there in the site, system will take from the common configuration that we did in the earlier thing. So
Okay.
for now, I'm not giving it.
Which means that is just going to take it from the GL.
No, not GL. The payable configuration, we gave the
Oh,
liability
okay.
account. Yeah, those
Yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, from there. So like if you wanted to have the liability based on the supplier, so maybe
Mm-hmm.
I have three suppliers, supplier A, supplier B, and supplier C. So
Mm-hmm.
in this case, if I wanted to have a particular liability account for the supplier A and
Mm-hmm.
different account for supplier B and supplier C, so I can
Mm-hmm.
utilize this and say that this will be the liability account for the supplier A,
Okay.
but this is not mandatory, so I can just
Okay.
leave this. So if I leave this blank, so system will
Mm-hmm.
pick from the common configuration that we did earlier in the payable module.
Okay.
So for now I'm just leaving it as a blank, since we have already created or
Mm-hmm.
configured the this thing, the account code combinations. So I'll just come from the purchasing. So here, if you see, we have the shipping method and the other things. So
Mm-hmm.
shipping method and the freight. So this is purely on the what do you call
Purchasing.
the supply chain part of it. So
Mm-hmm.
where we will have the shipping method, like how are we shipping it, and what is the terms, whether we will pay it or vendor will pay. So all
Mm-hmm.
those details will come in. So again, the
So this
freight.
is basically order management.
No, this is purchasing.
Purchasing. Okay.
Yeah, for order
So,
management also we will have, but that we will set up in the customer.
okay.
Yeah. So for this also we will have shipping and the other things because vendor will be in different location and we will be in different
Mm-hmm.
location. So we will have shipping, freight, and FOB
Okay.
and all those things.
Okay.
Yeah. And apart from that, we have maybe the inventory and the other things come in. So where we will say whether this is an onset point or how do we want to have the inventory controlled.
Mm-hmm.
So that is all about in the purchasing tab.
Okay.
And then we have the receiving. So in receiving, basically we will have like how do we want to handle our receiving. So if there is
Mm-hmm.
an exception in the shipping, so
Mm-hmm.
whether we want to reject it or whether we want to give warning. So again,
Mm-hmm.
this will be set up in the purchasing module. And if we
Okay.
have given it at the vendor, so which means that a purchasing configuration will be overridden by the supplier side configuration. So if we are giving it here.
Okay.
And we have different routings. So the routing options that we have is that direct, inspection, and standard. So
Mm-hmm.
standard is nothing but we receive the receipt and we will just verify, and the receiving part will be automated.
Okay.
And we have
So,
direct. Yeah.
so all these things that are there here are not part of, I'm just trying to think. In EBS, they are different, right? The way the supplier is set up.
Yeah, ABS, if you see this, we call the two-way, three-way, and four-way matching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
No, what I'm trying to get at is, right, when you, I mean, whatever I remember, I don't know completely, but I can just say, do we have purchasing, receiving, invoicing, everything there in EBS?
yes, we have.
We have? Okay.
Yeah, yes, we have. Yeah,
So that's not something new here.
yeah, this is not new.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, only few things, few fields are added, but apart from that, we have all those information there in EBS as well.
Okay.
Yeah, because in EBS, we don't generally see different tabs for site and address and the profile. So we will
Mm-hmm.
have as on one single page, and we don't
Yeah,
have a
yeah,
concept of creating a supply site created by another employee, so that we
yeah.
have
Mm-hmm.
a confusion. So this will be the changes in Fusion. But
Okay.
apart from that, this receiving, invoicing, these things are there in our EBS as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so these are the options that we have. So direct or inspection. So inspection is nothing but we will inspect and then we will give the confirmation. So
Mm-hmm.
based on that, we will have the PO matched.
Okay.
And if you wanted to have the receipt tolerance, like
Mm-hmm.
we have maybe 10 quantity ordered, and
Mm-hmm.
if you wanted to receive maybe 11 quantity, so that we can give the tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
So the over application action, that how do we want to handle it? So those part also we can enable it here.
Mm-hmm.
So basically these are all like the controlling part of it.
Okay.
And we have the invoices.
Okay.
So invoice is nothing but like here we can attach our like we have the payment terms that you are
Payment
asking for,
terms.
so that we
Oh,
have,
okay.
and we have the payment date basis, and also we have the pay date basis.
Mm-hmm.
So this we have, and apart from that, here we have the discount part. Whether we wanted to default or we
Mm-hmm.
don't want to use for this particular set, we can enable this.
Mm-hmm.
So for now, I'm just giving to pick from the payable options,
Okay.
and then we have the payment hold controls. So here, if I say hold payments, so which means unless I have the purchase order, I will
Mm-hmm.
not be able to create any invoices.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say no for this option.
Okay.
Sorry, this is second option. So the first option is that hold all the invoices. So which means So whichever invoice I'm creating, by default it will go in hold. So I will have to release the hold manually.
Okay.
So second option is the one that we have unmatched invoices. So which means it should have a purchase order to match.
Okay.
And this is like unvalidated invoices. So if the invoices is unvalidated, which means by default the invoice status will be in unvalidated. So if we
Hmm.
wanted to maybe have hold if this is unvalidated, so we can have this
Hmm.
as a nest. So I don't want this option, so I say no.
Okay.
And then we have the payment currencies and the other inputs to given. So we can have a different currency for the invoice and we can have the different currency in payment in Fusion. But this
Okay.
is not available in EBS. So this will be
Okay.
new in Fusion. So we will see that.
Uh-huh.
And we have the invoice amount limit. So for a
Hmm.
particular invoice, so for
Hmm.
this vendor, if you want to set up a limit, we can set up.
Okay.
And we have the invoice match option. So whether we wanted to have purchase order receipt or
Hmm.
the inspection advice. So based on that, we can set up these options.
Okay.
So you can see here the match options, two-way, three-way, and four-way.
Okay.
And the payment currency and the pay group is nothing but our classification.
Hmm.
So this is what we have in invoicing. And then we have the payments. So payments is again similar to what we saw in the supplier. So we will just
Okay.
say this is defaulted.
Defaulted. Okay.
Yeah. And site assignment, we saw that it will
Hmm.
basically default or gives which you will have access to this.
Okay.
And then qualification, like this is kind of an additional information.
Okay. What do you mean qualifications? Or the supplier
Yeah,
qualifications?
yeah. I think there is a module called iSupplier or something. So from
Uh,
there we will have the assessment and the other things coming in for the supply. So if you see
okay.
here, we will not be able to add any information. So this is
Okay.
only viewable.
Okay.
Yeah. So these are the options that we have. So we have created the supplier site as well. So we have given the access to the site.
Hmm.
So we can have this created.
Okay.
So apart from that,
But
if you, yeah,
yeah, but typically when it comes to a fusion, right? So AP starts off with only invoicing piece. Supplier, we are not worried about.
yeah.
Okay.
Supplying in the sense you're saying purchasing.
Supplier creation, I mean, in the sense that so it's
Yes,
part
yes,
of
correct.
purchasing, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we are not bothered. I mean, as a consultant, I'm not bothered about how to create a supplier and all that.
Yes, correct.
But it's good to have a knowledge of where it's what are the things that happen.
Yes.
Okay.
Because we will have the supplier conversion and all those things. So where we need to know the basic inputs.
Okay.
So that's good to have knowledge on this part.
Hmm.
Yeah, and we are almost done. So apart from that, this is again an additional information, but still we have an option to have a contact person from the supplier office.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can add more than one also. So these are the options that we have. So once
So
we have
here the qualifications are different from the qualifications that were there at or is it
same
the same qualifications?
same thing.
Same. Okay.
Yeah, so we have configured the supplier. So I will submit this so that we can use this at invoice page. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have created the supplier.
Hmm.
So through manage supplier, we can
You can
basically see this information.
search for that supplier. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Ours is Tata vendor. Yeah, it is here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is been authorized.
Hmm.
Yeah, so this is about the supplier creation.
Okay. Think you're out of time.
Yeah, we'll start tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure. Thanks.
yeah, thanks.